Welcome to the Living Medicine Podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sandy Newis. I am a psychologist and CEO of the Living Medicine Institute, and this is the Living Medicine Podcast, where I interview influential people and interesting people in the psychedelic space, specifically focusing around the issues that the core foundations of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And this is sponsored by Living Medicine Institute, which is a training program where we provide training content and resources for therapists and medical professionals who are interested in launching or deepening their career in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So I am very excited to be here with Jorge Camil. He is recognized internationally as an Ashoka Fellow and Endeavor Entrepreneur, visionary leader at the intersection of innovation, tech, and social impact with global distinction. And he is the CEO and founder of Entheogyn. And you are also a colleague of Dana Lerman, who is a previous guest. And she is the CEO of Skylight Psychedelics. So just noting that piece. So, and she brought us together. So I'm grateful and appreciative for you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Sandy. Such a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of people that are focused on the kind of therapy side of things. So it's interesting to have you here as an entrepreneur and a CEO who is, moving these visions forward. And so I'm excited to talk about that and really what your interest is and why you're interested in applying your entrepreneurial vision and skill in this area. So that's exciting to me too. So I'm a little baby entrepreneur.
It's not a path for everyone, huh?
No, I actually love startup. That's like my thing.
Absolutely.
All right. So you and I talked. So everybody that I talk, I always have a conversation with. And when you and I first talked and we first met, you described yourself as a serial entrepreneur. So what is that? And just say a little bit more about, how you become recognized internationally as an Ashoka Fellow. And just, what does that mean to you to be a serial entrepreneur? And kind of what is your interest in this field? Like what's got you here?
As a person, I've always been doing my own projects, my own companies, with some being successful and some being flat out absolute failures. But yes, you learn from them. And, we have this culture of fail fast, but at the same time, there comes a point in life where that can't be the go-to.
Right.
So I think Entheogyn for me is my most precious baby. It's I want to apply everything I've learned in every single project that I've had. My biggest company was an education company in Mexico that we ran for 13 years. And I am, yes, a serial entrepreneur, but a social entrepreneur, first and foremost. I come from Mexico City. And I've seen a lot of social suffering, a lot of income inequality, and at the same time in this gorgeous country. So for me, I understand that there is a world, and I try to push that moment of having a double bottom line. So of course, it's very important to have a profitable company. But I think for me, it's the social impact that we're having. And Entheogyn, after 45 years of being on this beautiful earth, I believe it to be the grand masterpiece.
Oh, I love it. Right.
Yeah.
So I want to hear more about why that's a grand masterpiece. And I absolutely love that. And it's clear you're very passionate about that. But why psychedelics and why psychedelic therapy? I always get plant medicine kind of bridges the gap, right? Is it therapy? Is it not? Is it therapeutic? That's a different discussion. But what's captured your attention about the psychedelic field and, why put all of that energy and passion and interest into this particular project?
Thank you for the question. So I've been mushroom foraging my whole life. Outside of Mexico City, we get all the big ones, the kings and the queens, we say. And had the pleasure of being invited to a company called Myco Love, which is a functional company, a mushroom company in Colorado, where we do something very similar to Entheogyn, but better in Entheogyn. And And then psychedelics became legal at this moment in history where the world feels particular, a bit chaotic, where we are so connected, but at the same time so disconnected from ourselves. And of course, I'm generalizing, not everyone, but
Yeah.
when psychedelics became legal in Colorado, it was a very natural question to ask ourselves. And we sat with that question for a good 5, 6 months. Like, are we going to enter a space that is so personally deep to us and be in the economy of the United States charging for a psychedelic session? So that really took a while to kind of grasp.
Mm.
Then we decided to do it so we could do a really good model. But I
Hmm.
think psychedelics, why I feel that we're just scratching the surface of what they can do for us as humanity. Beyond the deep healing that can happen, I feel that there's so many avenues in psychedelics that can be adopted to everything we're doing as a human race, everything we're doing as human beings. I know it's a very general answer, but I mean, we could go into the different sectors of it, but I think psychedelics are being legalized in the world, and Colorado and Oregon leading it for a deeper reason, for a deeper meaning. Mhm.
Well, it's interesting. I do training and through Living Medicine Institute, and we just finished a training retreat that is really held in a very ceremonial way. We're not doing ceremony per se, but if you look, you'll see the elements, and it's grounded in elementals, and some ritual and ceremony is really embedded into it. And I just see that, like, how I think I'm resonating with what you're saying, how people's psychological patterns, people's emotional patterns, and, we have this longing to come together as humans in this way. And as a trained mental health professional, you can also see people's defensive patterns emerge, people's attachment patterns emerge, and,
Mhm.
kind of that's very potent soup that brings everything to the surface and gives us an opportunity to see it, I think, in unique
Absolutely.
ways. So, so yeah, so tell me just like a couple things that about Entheogen make it unique. Like, I mean, there's lots of places, lots of psilocybin, treatment centers and things like that popping up all over the place. And so what is it that makes it unique, and how does your background inform that?
Thank you, Sandy. Entheogen, as far as we know, is the only vertically integrated legal psychedelic ecosystem in the world.
Hmm.
So we go, like we say, from spore to ceremony and to integration and to research and to education.
Ah,
So we do everything in-house. We do our own growing. We're about to apply for our own training license. We do our own healing sessions. We control everything. Whereas a lot of the other centers are just a healing center, just a grower, just a training
I
program.
see.
We
Uh-huh.
are so it's very yeah. That's what I would say would be the main differentiator of us.
I love that. So when you and I talked, we talked about kind of the importance for you just as a person, and the importance of you kind of aware of indigenous perspectives coming out of Mexico, and kind of wanting to have that be informing your center and things like that. So let's talk about ritual and ceremony. Like, what is it about that that's so important to you? Like, why do you care about that?
I mean, yeah, Mexico had a very profound impact in how I grew up. The first time I had the honor of visiting Huautla or many other parts of Mexico that have a lineage of psilocybin.
Hmm.
You understand it at a bit of at a deeper level, and in particular, I would say the great shamans, the great medicine abuelos and abuelas commune with the spirits for real. They have a dialogue with the beyond world. So that I think always struck me as a very important portal, a very important reflection that needed to be. And then going into the legal space, we approach that with because of that connection to that depth and that like source. we were very careful in Entheogen to never push our own agenda, to never say that we are going to interpret someone's psychedelic session. We are vehicles in Entheogen for us, and we are just getting data points and inspiration and guidance from indigenous wisdom, but by no means are we proposing or pushing any sort of agenda. And
Mm.
why? Because this has been done for thousands of years, and because the wisdom in these communities can feel so simple, but yet so deep because it's been done for many eons.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to Bob Falconer last night, who is an IFS person who has also studied many indigenous traditions, and he's got a book called Unattached Burdens, which is really essentially entities and spirits. And, I've been kind of making my way through various people like that, who have that background, and I have that interest, and just talking about like what you just said about like the direct relationship, the direct conversation with the other world, the direct conversation with the spirit world. And like, really, it's much more common than not, like in cultures. Like it's only, kind of in the modern world and maybe even the westernized modern world, whatever that means, where we begin to become skeptical of that because that's
Yeah,
just ancient tradition that is embedded deeply into the human experience, really.
absolutely. And you see it when on psychedelics, you see that those portals, you see that connection within yourself. You know how many people have spoken of this sense of oneness.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've had a couple of people on lately that have also been talking about the potential for harm. And maybe we can get to that as we move through a little bit. But, I always wonder if that can also, if we don't do that well and we don't honor the traditions and we don't know the learning that's attached to these, earth medicine and indigenous traditions and, things like that, are we doing it wrong? Or is there a wrong? Are we opening up portals that can be dangerous to people when they don't know, they're not mentored into how to work with that? I mean, there's a lot there.
Absolutely. I mean, so we have an Indigenous Advisory Council. What that means to us,
Is that through Entheogen? Or
correct.
okay, great. And does
And
that roll up into the mushroom company as well, into the psilocybin company as well?
yeah, everything in the psilocybin world, and the way we see it is a compass.
Yeah.
So we just have 3 out of 5 total members so far. We're finding the other two. And the way we see it is imagine if you're on a boat and you have a compass, and they help us guide. That we're not talking about tax analysis when we're talking with a council. It's more of a what direction should we head in.
Mm.
And I go back to what you were saying with ceremony and ritual. It's incredible to see how relevant to us and to the medicine itself these guidance are. So, for example, they've recommended that we bury our food substrate instead of composting it.
Oh, interesting.
They require that our facilitators take, depending on the facilitator, depending upon the strain, a certain type of bath before a psychedelic session. They offer themselves for the integration part of a psychedelic session. So it's really incredible to be able to tap into them, into this
Well,
wisdom.
it's interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know. I have done lots of dabbling in various sort of, I don't know, I call them earth medicine because it's like it's not a loaded term, and that's to what it is to me. I feel like the shamanic realms are, it's kind of a loaded term for me, so I stay away from that. But lots of different, you know, indigenously oriented perspectives in earth medicine and spiritual traditions, and just an interest area of mine. And recently it's kind of been like knocked over the head with the concept of, hey, guess what? Like, humans for thousands of years have been doing ceremony and ritual with the purpose of protection and effective energetic boundaries and all of that. And who are you to think that you can just dive in and like, oh yeah, I'll just do a little bit of this and that, whatever. Like not take it seriously. Like I guess what I'm saying is I have a renewed reverence for and humility for the importance of learning those structures.
Yeah.
with the goal of doing no harm, like to at a baseline level, you know,
Yes.
and yeah, so I mean, to me, ritual and ceremony play right into that because it's like those are the essential elements of which we can connect to the energetics of it in order to be in the current of it. I guess I've never actually said it quite like that, but what are
Yeah.
your thoughts about that?
Um, yes. What the way we're structured, a full yes. I mean, the way we're structuring it is we at the same time this can be very wooey to certain people, and particularly people that have not had a psychedelic experience. So we have to be also very, very gentle and respectful of people's boundaries. You know, we've talked to potential people that have never done it, that are very mental, very successful, very connected to their mind, and it's not until they have a psychedelic experience that they're smudging themselves with copal, you know.
Right.
Before that, they'll be like, what? This is a, like, there's so many jokes about the healing powers of crystals, you know, like, really? Does this crystal really provide these 35 million things it should provide just by holding it? But
Totally.
I think from the indigenous wisdom, everything goes back to ceremony, rituals, but also intention. And
Mm.
that's where we can connect even to the quantum world. You know, what is your intention? What are you manifesting? And if that is this copal is going to bathe me and protect me, then it is. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's interesting to see. We need to meet everyone where they are. And I think when I was younger, it was much easier. Everybody needs psychedelics, and
Right.
it's not necessarily true. It's a profound experience where you go very, very deep and it may not be for everyone.
Right. I have a phrase. I'll just pass this on because I literally have been saying it all weekend at our training retreat. I was like, well, here's the thing. If you believe that something is a thing, if you believe that sage is clearing your energy field, and if you believe that this selenite wand that I may just lay on your chest actually has some sort of impact on you, and then we act and assume as though it is so, whether it actually does or not is actually not relevant. Like,
Mhm.
so
Exactly.
you can like, so that's how I let go of my like skeptic scientific mind and just go all in because, and I think that maps onto what you're saying. Like if your
Yeah.
intention is that it is a tool, then it becomes one. And
And yeah, I remember a lot of our conversation with what is sacred, and I wanted
yeah,
to
mhm,
remember this, but
yeah.
it's we're also, I mean, look around, you know, like look at the process of photosynthesis out here. How is that not the craziest thing we've ever heard? Or this crystal that is buried under the thing and has been around for millions of years and stepped on by a dinosaur. Like, how is everything in life not sacred? And I think indigenous wisdom, to me in particular, brings me back to the importance of facing north with a certain intention and a certain ask and a certain and I believe we can run the risk of overdoing it because at the same time it requires its own set of logistics, but it's a beautiful way of living and it's a beautiful thing. Being a father reminds me of, you know, how to treat living creatures, how to the reverence for nature and mushrooms are the the living sentient beings that are going to rescue us.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, and it's interesting because one of the places that I've gotten myself recently freed up from is like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Like we do a training and I set up a central fire. Some
yeah.
people will call it an altar. And, yeah, before everybody gets there, I like orient it to the directions with the elementals. But
Yeah.
nobody else needs to be involved in that. That's just a me thing, right?
Yeah.
Like now I understand that we can go much bigger than that, but where I'm going with this is this like integration of that into those for whom that's foreign. And how can we combine the sacred and plant wisdom and indigenous perspectives with like therapists and business models and, bringing that into, the Western world that may be like, whoa, have this push
Yeah.
pull with it. I mean, I think that's a really interesting challenge.
We have to, Sandy. There is no other way, really. I also believe in, I've sometimes gotten a little bit of trouble for this opinion. It's just my opinion. I'll
Mhm.
say it, but uh, the the way the torch is being passed on to different generations in the indigenous communities that I've worked with is not as streamlined as we, the white Westerners, would like to believe.
Oh, for
You
sure.
know, and I've seen the younger generations with very little interest to carry that torch, you know,
Right.
in these communities. And this is very heavy wisdom. This is very necessary for humanity. And the therapists, the business model, the government, the NGOs, the social enterprises, everyone needs to come to the table and add how, you know, what are the questions we're asking? Is the government's incentive aligned with the NGO sector? Are the laws supporting both the indigenous and the business? So it's a huge thing to discuss. But I resonate with what you're saying because this idea of ancient wisdom, modern world, in my opinion, is gone. We need to unite, and we need to unite with intention and with respect, and absolutely no harm. But this is really heavy stuff, you know. The my nephew participates very much with the Juniquin and the Ashaninka in the Amazon forest, and the councils that they're having to save the Amazon forest is very interesting to see who's in the table and what's happening. And
Well,
that's
it
what's
is.
most exciting, that those two worlds are colliding, and we have your beautiful brain and incredible lawyers and incredible tech people figuring out, and that's what's, I think, one of the most inspiring things for me in this opening up of the legal psychedelic world.
Well, I just had this flash, like how we have an opportunity with psychedelics to do it differently, whereas, the kind of modern world has historically just squashed the indigenous world. We know this, hundreds, thousands of years of colonization and what that means, and the devaluing of those perspectives and the destroying of the resource that which
Yes.
the actual, you know, the actual lineage is based on. You destroy the resource, destroy the spirit. So we have an interesting opportunity, right? If we can like give the businessmen the mushrooms, and then do they suddenly get it? I mean, but there's like some legitimacy to that. Like,
A
like
little, yeah.
I mean, it's funny, but like very deeply
Uh,
serious. Like, okay.
what else? What else do you think has that effect?
I don't know anything. Collective dance, but oftentimes there's something else involved with that too. Like,
Exactly.
let's be real.
Uh,
You know,
yeah, I mean,
shared collective.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. And in particular, it's always been interesting to see for me, the people that you least expect, you know, like we're saying, the very particular type of people, more like wound up tight. Uh, and then what happens after a psychedelic experience? You know, it really is life changing, and not only life changing, it's life changing that is appropriated and kept. You know, you
Mm.
see these people change their life with one profound, deep psychedelic session, like change the life, change careers, move the family, be a better father,
Right.
separate from their partners, even. I don't know. Yeah.
But hold on, I always have to say the caveat. That does not happen to everyone. Not
Yeah,
everybody does one psilocybin
that's
journey
true.
that
That's
changes
true.
their
That's
entire
true.
life. Like this is just me, the psychologist, is like
That is
people with
true.
more complex mental health issues often need more than that, or not. But
But that's,
can
you know, that,
happen. But no, but I know. But to me, I just see an opening. I mean,
yeah,
they're like a shift. Like what else can change? Like can like bring a different level of consciousness and a lived experiential process of a different level of consciousness
yeah,
that opens up different ways of seeing that directly.
yeah.
Time spent in
Reminds
nature.
So it reminds me of a conversation I always have with my mother. 75 years old. She's from New York. She grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and she has a very good question that is, well, why can't we get? And she's been a Buddhist. She's Jewish by nature, but been floating around. A very spiritual person, an incredible woman. Why can't we get to these places without psychedelics? And it's a very good question. Like, sure,
Mhm.
like can't if you're getting there, is there a way you can get to this? And it's always an interesting discussion with her and my sisters, but I think the way we're built and how we are built, we need that push. And I think that if you have that level of discipline and that meditation practice where you really, really can go there, I believe, that Tibetan Buddhist monks can get to similar states, and maybe not the same things not happening in the brain physiologically, but for us folk with a mortgage and a sick kid in the day and the car I think this is here for us to heal and to connect.
Well, I think like, ooh, this is a big conversation. It's like what stops that? A long time ago, I spent a chunk of my career doing neurofeedback, which is just basically like utilizing technology to shift brain waves. And then the therapy layers onto it to kind of support that, which is very parallel to psychedelic work. And one of my teachers, he was actually talking about meditation. He's like, yeah, if you meditate 30 minutes a day, every day, like for like months and years, you too can achieve the same brain level changes,
But you really
that we can
can.
get through this technology. But there's a parallel here. Like, our world doesn't allow that time, space. People don't even know to do it. And, the whole, I mean, this is where we get into like cultural,
Yeah,
critique, but like the hierarchical ordering of the capitalistic, you know, society is like the opposite of the
yeah,
like vertical exploration of community that's grounded in the natural world. That those are just polar opposites from each other. And if money equals power and money then always gets to win, then that's a
yeah,
big problem.
yeah.
Um, so how do we not do that? Like, how do you, this sounds like this is a lot of your mission. But okay, before we do that, I want to circle back to one thing that you said about the somebody has to carry the torch and the
Mhm.
struggles that indigenous communities have, worldwide. Like I'm aware that that happens in the US, like, with like, indigenous groups here in the US trying to pass on their language, just that in and of itself. But this somebody has to carry the torch, and how do we get the youth involved? And I love that you are naming that as part of the process. And I want to just kind of ping that when you and I first talked, the entrepreneurs can play a role in that because those people need money.
Yeah,
Like we have to be incentivized in order to be able to support yourself, like
yeah.
on some levels, to do this study. I mean, am I on the right track there?
Absolutely. And I want to step back I'm by no means assuming that we are carrying the torch.
Right. No, I didn't get that, but I'm
Okay.
glad you
I
clarified.
believe that, um, yes, absolutely. We have to uh, all play a part. Think of the complexity of changing any law and the process that requires in the Senate and in Congress, and these aren't the necessarily the areas where at least the tribes that I've worked with in the past thrive in. Like think of proposing a bill to the government, asking your local, like that requires a certain skill set, and that's where we can kind of help, I think, in all these other areas. And also be careful with not abusing that, and also be careful with not, which is already happening, and it happens a lot in Mexico with these retreat centers that don't have medical support, let's say, or don't do a proper intake,
Mm.
or really really push a spiritual side when, I don't know, they're charging a certain amount of money and not taking care of the tribe they say they're helping. Like there's so much. Yeah.
right? Ayahuasca tourism, and what does that mean? And how do people navigate the economics of that while also trying to, maintain the sacred traditions? And
Yeah.
I 100% know to the tips of my toes that a real medicine person requires a lifetime of study. And so, how do we open the space for that to happen for
Mhm.
those who can lead on that level? I think is of critical importance. Um,
And in a way, what we're talking about has been talked about for thousands of years, even in different cultures. I mean, this concept of the kind of the philosopher king and queen, that of course there is power, of course there is money, but the ruling comes from a different side. And I think that is every day more present in our society. That internal philosophy that we've lost with a lot of these indigenous tribes, but at the same time attract us so much. Whether we're doing enough for them or not is another long conversation, and where and how. But
mhm.
I'm hopeful that we're shifting more towards that philosopher king and queen world that is inspired and kind of directed by nature.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Like we really do, as you're talking, I'm just kind of sitting here, kind of, soaking in the idea like that, we really do have an opportunity to do something different here. And working with indigenous people and indigenous perspectives and to not do harm to
Yeah,
them and to their cultures. Like a long time ago, I studied with Malidoma Somé for a chunk of years, and he's from Africa. And he said, the indigenous world needs, the West and what it has to offer to survive, but the West needs the indigenous world because it is imploding in itself and self-destructing.
yeah,
Like, and that really struck home for me. So it's like how if we're going to entertain the possibility that psychedelics open up consciousness in a way that opens up the perspective of more, indigenous perspective, allowing more integration with that, what needs to happen in order to avoid the harm to the indigenous people that this interest has previously brought in, the past hundreds of years, and also avoid harm to Westerners who can have what other guests have talked about as like ontological shock. Like you see
yeah.
that which can't be unseen and it does not fit in to the life that you've been leading. Like how do we balance that? Like
Great
you're
question.
you're creating a center that you're wanting to do that essentially, right? So
Yeah.
so how do we do it? How do we take the care needed? How's it
I
happen?
I mean, it's a great question. That what comes to mind initially is um, having in the legal space, obviously not the
Mhm.
underground space, having strict enough guidelines and laws and protection systems that allow us to rely on this system, but at the same time kind of a feedback system that allows these same laws to be flexible and be modified to to promote the mission you're saying, the no harm, the respect. And I cannot give a shout out to Colorado. There's a lot of there's always going to be so many people that love this, hate that, and it's like passing a law for a state, and we may love or not love our government, but doing government is a very complicated job, you know.
Right.
It really is. And from the
Yeah, right. It's
outside
easy
with
for us to sit here and be like, oh, da 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 da
and
da.
I've seen I used to work with different governments, and I've seen incredible people and people that are completely not incredible and connected to evil forces and whatnot. But it's very easy, like you say, for us to say like, well, the law should have this and that. And yeah, maybe we're right, but maybe we're not understanding how that connects to the rest of the system. So all of that to say, uh, Colorado does put a lot of emphasis on in their guidelines and their regulations on indigenous wisdom, indigenous tribes, indigenous peoples in how they should collaborate with this. There was an advisory board before the laws got implemented where they were consulting like that. So to answer your question, I would say uh, a legal system that is rigid enough to save us, it's to protect us, sorry, but able to modify itself, because we're just at the beginning. In the legal space, the unregulated space is a little trickier. You know, you hear these stories of things happening because of not having that kind of system.
Mm, interesting. So, so we could talk about all of this stuff for a really long time, and I'm super, super interested, and I'm appreciating kind of the vision of what you're doing, and I'm hearing that that's really going to be like, I mean, you're talking about like broad level involvement with governmental systems and, supporting indigenous communities, and it sounds like all of that is part of your vision for Entheogen. Is that accurate? Like that is
We
Entheogen,
are, we
right?
are vehicles. We don't have an agenda. We don't interpret people's psychedelics journey. We trust that they have all the tools and all the ability to do it. We support them in many different ways, some very sacred and some very medical and some very technical. But by no means are we proposing that. And we're also learning ourselves.
Yeah.
How do we apply this Indigenous Council? What questions matter? What tasks do we need to do, and how do you prioritize them? But we're excited. We should be up and running in 3-4 months. We'd love to have
Awesome.
you come visit, and yeah, the idea is to take this to other parts of the world for sure.
Great. Good. So, how do people find you? And any last words kind of that you want to share with the audience? Kind of anything that's just like, oh, I want to, I would like to say this. And then how do people find you?
Entheogyn.com would be the
Okay.
easiest way. Please, if you can subscribe to our information, we have it there. Um, I would first and foremost thank you for this incredible discussion. I know it can keep
Mm.
going, and for all the fantastic work you do, and in particular your approach. I would encourage everyone to read up, to educate themselves, to reach out, to kind of see where the psychedelics can benefit your life, and maybe it's a no. But I would encourage everyone to read up on this, to understand what's happening in the space and how can that relate to yourselves,
All right.
because it's the yeah it's the only the it's I think the best medicine for our minds, these overacting minds, when you can just see it and be like, wow, we everything is going to be okay. Maybe maybe
Right, right. Well, I mean, we need this medicine, and we just do,
I
you know.
strongly believe so, yes.
Right. We need to involve the people who know about this medicine, not just the actual, medicines that we take in, but the medicine that opens up. So, and to hold that with reverence, I think is of critical importance as we move through this.
Yeah.
So yes. So thank you so much,
Thank
Jorge.
you, Sandy, so
And I
much.
really appreciate your time and I appreciate your vision. And I'm excited to see what happens with Entheogen and what you all accomplish. And I'm really grateful to you for sharing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annie. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.